The laughter echoed to the marble lobby, sharp and careless, the kind that came from a man who had never been told no. It stopped only when the pen slipped from his fingers and clattered onto the floor, because the signature on the document in front of him carried a name he thought was buried forever. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of truth, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Stories like this remind us that destiny often arrives wearing the most unexpected face. The building stood in downtown Chicago like a monument to wealth and ambition. 30 floors of glass and steel that reflected the sky and the egos of those who worked inside. It belonged, at least in everyone's mind, to Richard Holloway, a self-made millionaire known for his sharp suits, sharper tongue, and reputation for never losing. He had built his empire from nothing, or so he told the world, and he guarded it fiercely. Employees feared him. Competitors respected him, and the city whispered his name with a mix of admiration and resentment. On that particular morning, Richard was in a rare good mood. A major deal had closed overnight, and he was preparing to announce another expansion. That was when the receptionist nervously informed him that someone insisted on seeing him immediately, claiming ownership of the building. Richard laughed, assuming it was either a prank or a delusional opportunist. He agreed to the meeting purely for amusement. The man who walked into his office did not look like an owner. He was in his early 30s, wearing a simple jacket, shoes worn but clean, posture calm but firm. His name was Daniel Carter. He spoke politely, introduced himself, and placed a thin folder on the desk. Richard barely glanced at it before leaning back, amused, ready to enjoy what he thought would be a short and ridiculous encounter. Daniel had not always been calm. He had learned to be, raised in a small Christian household in rural Ohio. He grew up watching his father work multiple jobs while still finding time to help neighbors without expecting anything in return. His mother believed that integrity was worth more than comfort. When both parents died within a year of each other, Daniel was just 17. He entered adulthood carrying grief, debt, and a promise to himself that he would never let bitterness decide who he became. Life did not go easy on him. College plans fell apart. He worked construction, warehouses, night shifts, and slept in his car more than once. What kept him going was a single envelope his father had left behind, unopened, with instructions to wait until the time felt right. Daniel waited years, not out of superstition, but respect. When he finally opened it, the contents changed everything. Inside was a legal document, faded but valid, transferring ownership of a majority share in a real estate holding company. The signature belonged to Richard Holloway's former partner, a man who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances decades earlier. Daniel's father had once saved that man's life, anonymously, during a workplace accident. The share had been placed in Daniel's father's name as a safeguard, never meant to be used unless necessary. Daniel spent months verifying the truth, hiring legal counsel, tracing records, and discovering a story far darker than he expected. Richard Holloway's rise had not been clean. His partner's disappearance had been conveniently timed, and the transfer of assets had been buried under layers of manipulation. The signature Daniel now carried was not just ink, it was evidence. Back in the office, Richard's laughter faded as he finally looked down. His eyes narrowed, scanning the document until they landed on the signature. His face drained of color. For the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar. Fear. Daniel did not gloat. He did not raise his voice. He simply waited. The building, the company, the empire Richard had guarded so fiercely now belonged, legally and undeniably, to the man he had just laughed at. Richard tried to regain control. He questioned the validity, the timing, the audacity. But every argument collapsed under the weight of verified records and legal authority. Years of power could not erase the truth preserved in that signature. What followed was not revenge, but reckoning. Daniel did not remove Richard immediately. Instead, he initiated audits, employee reviews, and restructuring. He listened to stories that had never been heard. Janitors who had been ignored. Assistants who had been overworked. Managers who had been threatened into silence. Slowly, the building's atmosphere changed. Daniel faced his own struggles. The pressure was enormous. Media scrutiny intensified. Lawsuits surfaced. Old allies of Richard pushed back hard. Daniel questioned himself often, wondering if he was strong enough to carry not just ownership, but responsibility. He remembered his parents, their belief that power was meant to protect, not dominate. Richard, meanwhile, was forced to confront a life built on shortcuts and silence. Watching the company thrive under compassion rather than fear unsettled him more than losing control. For the first time, he saw the faces behind the numbers. The damage he had dismissed now stood in front of him, undeniable. Months passed. Profits stabilized. Employee morale soared. Community programs were launched. Daniel invested in housing initiatives, education funds, and ethical business practices. The company's reputation transformed, not overnight, but steadily, honestly. The moment that changed everything came quietly. Richard submitted his resignation, not under threat, but reflection. He left the building without ceremony, carrying less than he arrived with years earlier. Daniel watched him go, not with triumph, but understanding. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness and truth can stand up to power, please take a moment near the end to like, comment, and share this video so others can feel this message too. Before we close, we have one special request. Comment the word truth below if you believe that what is hidden always finds its way into the light. Daniel still walks into that building every morning, not as a conqueror, but as a steward. The signature that once broke a man's laughter became the foundation of something far greater. Proof that second chances are real, and that sometimes the quietest voice carries the strongest authority.